record this computer. So, hello, thank you very much for coming to join me today for today's learning and development session on interviewing skills. I'll just quickly introduce myself first, who I am, why I'm taking the session. Obviously, you guys know me from the office anyway, so I'm Michael, the Senior Talent Acquisition Executive here at Quali, our beautiful mobile gaming company. So I'll be delivering this session for you today because in my role, I'm fairly proficient at interviewing people. I do it lots and lots, and I hope I'm fairly good at it anyway. And the reason we're running this session with you two today is because I know you do a lot of interviewing in your own role for your own departments. So this will hopefully help you going forward to help you deliver good interviews, both for you and, just as importantly, which is something I'll keep stressing, the candidate as well. So a couple of bits of housekeeping first of all. So firstly, thank you very much for filling out the health and safety sheet, confirming you've got a good, safe, healthy learning environment, because I hate the word obviously, but obviously we're having to do it remotely because our offices are closed at the moment, which is wonderful for me anyway, not for everybody else. So thank you very much for confirming that. And I just want you to verbally confirm again that you do have a safe, ergonomic, happy, healthy environment to learn in.
We do, yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. So just wanted to lay out some ground rules as well. Please do try and give it your full attention. So minimize distraction, as in make sure your kids are on mute, your phones are on silent, you don't have the tumble dryer blaring, and you're not getting a ton of emails that are distracting you, notifications. Do ask me anything at all that you want to. Feel free to talk about anything at all that you want to, preferably on topic. If it is off topic, don't worry, I'll soon pull you back in. So that's the housekeeping out of the way. First of all, could we just formally introduce ourselves? Sian, if you want to go first.
Hi, I'm Sian. I'm the Senior Compliance Officer at Quali. Little fact about myself, I have a first edition Harry Potter book, which my husband ruined by using it as a coffee mat, and it's now severely devalued.
I'm sure he's very sorry about that and would never do it again.
Yeah.
Because coasters are a thing, apparently. Thank you, Sian.
Yeah.
Hi, my name's Mary. I'm the lead administrator at Quali. Interesting fact about myself is that I once danced with Noel Edmonds on a cruise ship on the Mediterranean.
Interesting, unique, not heard that one before. Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much for that, Sian and Mary. So I'm just going to quickly share my screen to show you some wonderful slides that have been prepared for us. That's not it. That's not it. This is it. So can you see the slides?
Yep.
Excellent. So I just want to give you a bit of a layout of what we'll be covering today. It's not all on there. So we'll be going over, well, in general, interview skills, equipping you with good skills to be able to do an effective, fair, enjoyable interview. And we'll be doing this by breaking the process down into its individual stages and talking about those. Talking about how to prepare yourself to make sure you're ready for the interview and able to do a good one. We'll be talking about the best practices and the right way to do things. We'll be talking about the whats and the whys of each part of the interview. We'll be talking about how to design the layouts of your interview as well. We'll also be talking about any additional testing or evaluation methods that you could use inside or out of the interview to help your evaluation. And one of the big things, we'll talk about how to use your emotional intelligence to help both you and the candidate have a good experience. And we'll also throw in some exercises as well to check that you are engaged and taking something on from it. So the overall objectives are to equip you to do a fair, in-depth and effective interview that provides a great experience both you and the candidate. To make sure that you do take this back to the workplace, I've sent you across an ACT framework document as well, which you should have. So during the training, I want you to think about and focus on how you'll be applying the training back in your job. And the ACT document will help you with that. And it's quite a useful planning tool, which you should fill out pretty quickly after the end of the session to help you reflect and make sure you get the most out of today. So moving on, I'll just stop sharing my screen for a moment, to section 2, preparation. So making sure you're prepared for the interview is the key first thing to do. So you can't just turn up, have the candidate turn up and just start interviewing. You've got to make sure you've got an appropriate space ready. Have you booked a room? This is a common thing we find. Have you booked the room? Are there rooms available? Is it a suitable room? It's not a room next to a really noisy road or a room that's too hot, that's too cold. Have a really good space prepared. If it's a virtual interview, make sure that you've got the right platform to use, such as Zoom. That's one we prefer. Make sure you know how to use it. You know how to do any troubleshooting, because there's nothing worse for a candidate if they're sat there not knowing how to use it. And it's really good if you can give them guidance, like this is where the unmute button is. This is this problem. This is how you can fix it. So you're responsible for them having the right space virtually or physically. Make sure you research the candidate, and that's not necessarily just the CV. Is there any other ways you can find out about the candidate from your own professional network? Some roles like to do social media checking of people, especially if it's a customer facing role or a sensitive role where you could end up in the media for something bad, and you might want to dig a bit into people's pasts. Make sure you have read their CV. One of the worst things in interviews, if you're going through an interview with somebody clearly reading their CV for the first time whilst they're telling you about them and you're clearly not listening. So make sure you do have a good read of the CV. You do digest it, you understand it. Ideally, you've written out things that you want to talk to them about on there ahead of time, highlighted points of interest for discussion and so forth. So have your questions ready as well. You know what you want to ask them. This will be different for each job. So have the questions prepared, your interview style prepared, and also make sure you've got your kit ready. Have you brought your pen and paper? Have you done your printouts? Have you got the CV ready? Have you got any documents you need for exercises ready? So don't have the candidate turn up and you rush around in and out 5 minutes later. Get everything ready, ready to go. So on to next. What's the next slide? I can have to find share screen on this thing. There we go. Doing really well for time. It's fantastic. So next, building rapport. So when interviewing, it's really important to remember that it's an opportunity for the candidate as much as it's an opportunity to you to find out about each other and get to know each other better. So it's a two-way conversation. Candidates have a lot of choice nowadays. You want them to want you as much as you want to want them. So building rapport is a great way to make sure that you get the best out of people. So don't rush this bit. Spend as much time as you need to on it, not excessively. So this helps with a few things. It sets the tone well for the rest of the interview. So you can show them that you are friendly, you are approachable, you are amenable, and it sets the tone well from there. It humanizes you as well, because quite often they might just see you as a corporate admin person. It makes sure that you get the best out of people, because if they're relaxed and happy, they're going to answer the questions better. They're going to give you more in-depth answers. They're going to hold less back. They're going to be more honest in areas they might not have otherwise been. It makes it an enjoyable experience. And again, that goes back to wanting them to want you, and also potentially them going away, even if they're not successful, being a brand ambassador for the company. If people don't get the job, they can be bitter. If they've had a fantastic experience, they're not going to go away and say bad things about us, hopefully, if we've treated them beautifully. And a lot of that starts with building rapport. and give them that really good first impression of you and thus the organisation. So I'll do a quick exercise around that. So I'd like you just to tell me a way that you could build rapport. Sian, starting with you, section 2, exercise.
So if it's a face-to-face interview, you could ask them about their journey, if they found us okay. And again, if it's a virtual meeting like it is at the moment, you can ask them if the system was okay, if they managed to get online easy enough. They're okay.
Yeah, that's good. Feel very rapport with you. Mary, how would you go about it?
I suppose you could ask them how they're feeling today, if they're okay, and maybe talk about something that we all talk about, like the weather, just to put them at ease.
Yeah, good. Classic, not very imaginative, but classic British point. So similar to the last few things I was saying, I just want to cover and really double down on the importance of telling the candidate about the company and the role. A lot of interviews are just us asking questions and us just assuming they know everything about us, or us just thinking, I just need you to tick these boxes. I just want to hear these keywords, phrases, skills, experience. It's super important because, as I said before, the candidate has a choice as well. So this helps with the candidate deciding on us. They're gonna be interviewing at multiple places. If we've told them all the amazing things about our company, the amazing projects your department's working on, the really cool culture, everything like that, it's going to really help them to favour us and to decide that we're the ones that they want to join if we were to make them the offer, because they are judging us as much as we're judging them. And it's a very candidate-driven market at the moment, especially as a lot more roles are being opened remotely. That means you're not just competing for this human asset with the company down the road, you're competing with a company in Manchester that's allowing them to work remotely. So it's exponentially harder for you to kind of get your claws into the candidate. So ways you could sell the organisation are things like telling them about the successes we've had, telling them about the projects your department's working on, telling them about future things that are happening, telling them about plans, growth plans for both the company, department, telling them about the training on offer, telling them about the progression on offer. Really make them love it and love you and want the job and want the company and want to work for you as well. Super key. So another quick exercise around, so what do you think would happen if we didn't sell the role, sell the company to them? What do you think would happen? Sian, quick fire question.
Well, they might not be interested in working for us, and it's a waste of time for them to come and interview, and it's a waste of time for us having interviewed them.
Excellent as always, Sian, thank you. Mary?
I think if you don't sell the company, they might then not actually have enough information to decide whether the job is right for them or not.
Exactly, yeah. So, Sian, what would you say a good way to sell the company is?
Probably to tell them about all the things that are going on and what projects are being worked on, and they can establish whether that's something they would want to be involved in.
Yeah, that's it. Good, thank you. Mary?
You could, as well as the role, you could also talk to them about the social aspects of the company and how the company, reacts socially with each other, what sorts of things you do.
Brilliant, good. Thank you very much. So, moving on to my next slide, which is questioning. I could go on all day about questioning, but I will keep it brief. So we're about halfway there. So you want to have a good mix of questions. You've got to understand there's lots of different types of questions. You've got technical questions, you've got behavioral questions, you've got skills-based questions, you've got competency questions, you've got example-based questions, and you want this mix so that you can find out lots of different aspects of the person. You don't just want to find out about their technical ability, you want to find out about their skills as well. You just don't want to know their competencies. You want some examples of where they've applied them in their day-to-day role as well. So we can develop a different mix and a different role. If you've got a super technical role, you want to have more technical questions, you want to have more skill-based, you want more examples of when they've done this in the workplace. If you've got a very customer-facing role, you want more behavioural questions to determine how they'd react in certain situations. You want more example-based questions. And say, stereotyping very badly, a receptionist role is going to be more about behavioural and competencies, and a chief financial officer is going to be more skills and technical. So you've just got to make sure that you do alter the mix for each role and be mindful about the way you've got the mix and why you've got the mix as well. So I'll just give you an example of each type of question. I've made these relevant to what I assume your roles are. So a technical question, for example, could be, what compliance regulations would you need to adhere to when dealing with an EU-based service provider? And they've got to give a technical answer to that. A behavioural question would be, how do you work differently if working on a project individually or working on a project as part of a team? A skills-based question could be, what software packages are you familiar with? And a competency-based question could be, I'm not sure about this one now, how do you maintain good working relationships with your colleagues? So I would like you to take it in turns to give me an example of each type of those questions: the technical, behavioural skills, competency. So Sian, we're starting with you. Could you give me an example of a technical question that you might ask for your roles?
So we could ask, what are the latest EU regulations viewpoint on non-audited accounts?
Okay, good. Good. I've heard a big problem with your department that now we're leaving the EU, you guys are having to unlearn everything and relearn. So I am sorry for that. So I know how much you love reading. Mary, could you please give an example of a behavioural?
You could maybe ask them about a scenario where they've had to deal with a difficult manager and how they've handled that. Yeah,
some managers, it's good, they've got the emotional intelligence to realise that that's something their employees might deal with, and so do like to ask that in interview. Sian, could you give me an example of a skills question, please?
We could ask what compliancy frameworks they are familiar with and see if it's similar to ones we have.
Yeah, good. Mary, competency to end with, please.
You could maybe ask them about some of their achievements at work, or maybe their biggest achievement.
Yeah, it's good. It's always a good question. Always a good question. So when you're questioning, there's different ways to question as well, as we've covered. There's also opened and closed questions. Have you guys ever heard of open and closed questions? Yeah. Brilliant. So I'll just lay out a bit more about them. So an open question is one where they can give an elaborate answer with as much or as little information as they need to. And a closed question is effectively, not always, it boils down to a yes or a no answer. So you want to use open questions when drilling down more, and you might want to do that if a candidate's not giving you as much information as you'd like, to help give them the opportunity to keep answering and keep expanding and let you find out more and to let them put their best foot forward. A closed question is where you want to hone in on something specific and get a yes, no, get the definitive answer for that. So what's an open version of this closed question? I'm going to ask Sian, Mary, you can go first this time. So I'm going to ask a closed question. I want you to tell me what an open version would be. So closed question, do you enjoy your job? What's an open version?
You could maybe ask them what they actually enjoy about their job so that they've got to elaborate.
Good, brilliant. Sian, I'm not asking you this. This is the question. Do you have any questions?
So you could more specifically ask them what questions they have.
That's it. So what you want to have on your mind is who, what, how, why, when, where. They're your open questions. So one of my key interview tips while we're on questioning, when you're asking the candidate if they have any questions at the end, a lot of people say, do you have any questions? And is that a closed or an open question?
Closed.
Do you have any questions? Closed question. That gives them the opportunity, if they're a bit rabbit in the headlights, to just go, no. So you always say, what questions do you have? What would you like to ask us? I'm always amazed at how many hiring managers go, do you have any questions? Candidates just like, Jesus, okay, no. And then as soon as I say, what questions do you have? They're like, oh, I've actually got these questions. So that's really, really good way when you're at the end of an interview. So let's skip that bit, Sean. So moving on to section 6, how to end the interview. So what you want to do at the end is explain the next steps of the interview process. So you've got to lay out a roadmap, a timeline of the procedure. So you already know what that is. It's fairly similar across the company. So you let them know you'll be hearing from us in the next X amount of days. The next stages for this role are we do a technical test, and anyone that moves on from there, we then have a final interview, which is a bit longer and with more members of the team. So you explain the next steps, you set out the timelines and expectations and thank them for the time. And again, that's all part of giving them a good candidate journey. Thank them for their time as well. Build the rapport again, get them out of the building. So other things to consider when interviewing. Do I have a slide about that? Let's have a check. I don't think it's been very slide heavy, this one. Am I sharing screen?
Yeah.
I am.
No. Oh, not the slide. No, sorry.
Don't think I am.
There you are. Yeah.
Yeah.
So things to consider that need to be in your head: bias, fairness, and equality. So a human trait, you've got to fight against your human traits, which is we're tribal. You tend to treat people more like you better, and that's a tendency rather than something everybody does. So you need to make sure that you're not being biased, going, oh, this person's like so-and-so in my team, therefore I'm going to put a positive spin on them, or they're very different to everybody else. And that could be personality-wise, or they're wearing the same colour shirt as everybody else. So you've got to make sure you're being fair to people with questions as well. This is why you prepare the questions ahead of time, to make sure that you ask people the same questions. They get the same level of difficulty, which means you can judge and assess people fairly as well. And that means you're making sure that you evaluate people based on their merits, their interview performance, and their overall ability to be able to do the job, rather than any biases or assumptions or stereotypes or thoughts that you might have during the interview process that then cause you to just ignore all of that. So doing the cheeky little exercise, last but one. So what are the risks around what we've just discussed, having the biases, et cetera, around this, like discrimination, fairness, not getting a diverse team, not bringing new types of people in as well is another key thing with having biases. Sean, what would you say risk is if you don't have that attitude when interviewing?
Well, you could leave yourself and the company open to cases of discrimination about age or sex, race, religion.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Mary, what could you add to that?
I suppose if you were biased or unfair, then you might not actually end up getting the best person for the job. And that could have a long-term impact on the company.
Exactly. Good. Okay. So nearly there. So other ways to help determine candidate fit in interview, you could do a technical test. You could set them a short compliancy test, Sean, Mary, you could do a kind of attention to detail admin type of thing. So technical tests are good for looking at their technical skills, their knowledge, their work style, their ability to create something in the format that you decide. You could also do personality type tests. And these help with, there's loads out there like Myers-Briggs, the INSTJ tests, and they help with things like team fit, culture fit, personality fit. So you don't just have to rely on the conversation during interview. You can do a test, and you can do that in interview if it's a short one, or you can do that as a take-home test as part of the overall interview process. So evaluating them. So once you've done the interview and any relevant tests, you need to make sure that you've got a way to evaluate candidates that ideally you've already got prepared. And that needs to be fit for purpose. You're going to want a different method for each role, be it a technical role, non-technical role, custom facing, not custom facing, etc. And again, it needs to be fair and it needs to be unbiased as well. So you can use things like a scoring matrix where you give different scores to things like experience, the skills, how they answered, their research and interest in the company, and things like that. So section 10 exercise. So I've got another slide to show you in a second. So by now you should know what makes a good interviewer. So I've got a list of 10 things that make a good interviewer ready to show you. I would like you to have a stab to see if you could guess at any of them, first of all. So Sian, what would you go with? Give me a couple of examples.
I think a good interview would be somebody who asks the right questions.
Yep.
And somebody who's fair and biased.
Good. Mary?
I think a good interview would be somebody who has prepared well for the interview and researched the candidate and their CV well.
That's it. That's good. So let's see what our survey says. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Oh, wrong way. So the 10 characteristics: you understand the hiring need, you know how to sell the position, you're fair, you ask the right questions, you do your research, you're kind, you're a body language expert, and that comes down to rapport, knowing when to build rapport, how long it goes on for. You're good at two-way conversation, you take your notes, and you always provide closure to them as well. So I've got a couple of small interesting facts just around interviewing employment just before we wrap this up. These aren't interesting to everybody. 64% of people will look into a company before deciding to apply. The things people want, this is super interesting: an easy commute, work-life balance, and company culture. So more people would rather have an easy commute than a nice workplace. Now, 98% of students and grads take how they'll be treated fairly into whether they'll take a job or not, which is a big deal, a really big deal. And yeah, there's some more interesting facts on there. My one I like as well is that people would rather have a friendly workplace than a 3% pay rise, but I don't think 3% really would sway that many people, to be honest. So section 12, just want you to reflect on a couple of things that you've learned and how you think it'll help you in your workplace. So Sian?
I think probably one of the best things I've learned is just how and why it's important to use a different mix of questions.
Yeah, perfect. Mary?
I think one of the things that I've learned is to make sure that the interview process is fair and unbiased.
That's it, perfect. So just a quick reminder to complete the ACT, please. Make sure you just reflect on today, note down or whatever makes you remember stuff so that it doesn't just go in and out, and that you can use it back in your workplace. So just wanted to quickly ask for any feedback. If there's anything you changed, anything you liked, anything you didn't have to answer all of those things. Sian, what do you say?
Yeah, really enjoyed it. I like the exercises, keeping us on our toes, keeping us engaged.
Excellent. Mary, what do you say?
Yeah, again, I found it very interesting. I think it might be useful if there'd actually been a workbook that we could have sort of worked through alongside the lecture as well.
Okay, well, thank you for your feedback. Definitely take that on board for future learners. And thank you very, very much for your time. I really hope it's been informative and useful for you in some capacity. And I look forward to following up with you in the future to see how you've been able to implement this. So thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you, Mike. Bye.